All right, in today's lesson, we're going to take a look at rationalizing radical expressions by multiplying by a conjugate. The conjugate is pretty much the same expression in the bottom, except you're going to change your middle sign. So if it's a plus sign, it becomes a negative sign or a minus sign, and if it's a minus sign, it becomes a plus sign. Okay, the reason we do this is when you multiply two conjugates together, you don't need to go through the entire process of foiling it and figuring it out. What you're doing is you're squaring the first term, you're squaring the second term, and you're taking the difference of the two. So for example, if I was given, say, 2 plus the square root of 2, and I wanted to multiply that by its conjugate, 2 minus the square root of 2, notice they're the exact same thing. All I did was change the middle sign. Okay, as opposed to having to FOIL this entire thing out, what we can do is square the first term. So we do 2 squared minus square of the second term, square root of 2 squared. All right, so we get 4 minus 2, which is 2. It just makes it a little easier as opposed to, again, having to apply the FOIL method, which takes a little bit more time and is could be prone to mistakes. All right, let's take a look at a different example. Okay, so here we are. We have something like this, 3 over 2 plus the square root of 2. So something like this, you want to multiply both the top and the bottom by the conjugate of our denominator. So if it's 2 plus the square root of 2, I'm going to multiply both the top and bottom by 2 minus the square root of 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. Here, this is the distributive property, so I'm going to go ahead and put my answer down here. 3 times 2 is going to give me 6. 3 times the negative square root of 2 is going to be 3 minus 3 square root of 2. And then on the bottom, we have our conjugate, so square the first term. So I have 2 squared minus, and then the square root of 2 squared. Let's go ahead and simplify this. So now on the top, 6 minus 3 square root of 2 over. And then on the bottom, this is going to be 4. That's going to be 2, so I just get a 2 on the bottom. Now this right here is an acceptable final answer. There's one more way you could simplify this. That's by breaking it down. So I'm going to go ahead and break this into both of these, into 2 separate fractions. So it could also be 6 over 2 minus 3 square root of 2 over 2. In this case, this one on the right, that could simplify to 3 minus, and then 3 square root of 2 over 2. I would accept either of these two answers. Those are both technically correct. Okay, moving on to one more type of question here. All right, so with this one, we have a little bit more work because we have a 2-term, including a radical on the top. But again, we care only about what we're multiplying by on the bottom. So we're going to multiply this by 2 plus the square root of 7, 2 plus the square root of 7 on both the top and the bottom. Now the top we do have to FOIL. All right, so if we remember the FOIL method, it's first, outer, inner, last. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so first would be 1 times 2. That's going to give me 2. The outer terms are 1 times the square root of 7, which is just 1 square root of 7. The inner terms are square root of 7 times 2, so that's going to be 2 square root of 7. And then the outer term, the last term is the square root of 7 and the square root of 7, which is the square root of 49, which is just 7 when you multiply those together. And on the bottom, we know already it's a conjugate, so square each of your first terms minus the square of your second term, which is going to make things much easier in this next step when we start solving. Okay, so let's go ahead and combine where we have some different terms we can combine here. We have in the top, we have 2 and 7. That's going to give me 9. We also have, these are 2 like radicals, so it's going to be 3 square root of 7 when I add those together. And then on the bottom, this is a 4. This is going to be a 7, so we're going to end up with 3 on the bottom. All right, now again, this is technically something that you could accept as an answer, but it can be simplified a little further, so let's go ahead and do that. We have 9 over 3, and we have 3 square root of 7 over 3. Sorry, that was negative, so these are both negative. Okay, so this becomes a negative 3, and this becomes a negative 1 square root of 7, or just square root of 7. Okay, again, both of these technically acceptable answers. I would say this bottom one is the more simplified version of it. So it still requires a little bit of work with these questions. But again, that trick with the conjugate and the denominator does make things a little bit easier when you're simplifying these types.